This is Kristina Mand-Lakhiani, co-founder of Mindvalley, and welcome to a conversation with Brendan Kane. Hi, Brendan.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. Brendan is a really amazing and interesting individual and human being, and actually a friend. So I'm very excited to interview you again. So for those who have joined, Brendan, I think you are most famous for your I don't know if it's a record but for your experiment of growing your following from 0 to 1 million in 30 days on Facebook, right?
Yeah, that's what most people know me for, and that I turned it into a book. And yeah, so that I think that's probably, if you do know me, it's from that experiment that I ran.
But officially, you are a marketing specialist and consultant to celebrities in the field of marketing and social media, right?
Yeah, so what we specially help celebrities, athletes, brands, corporations, and even startups is finding ways to help them overcome all of the noise in the world, stand out in very crowded and oversaturated market, which in today's world is pretty much any industry or market that you're going into, just by the sheer amount of content that's produced each day.
I think it's the air we breathe that is oversaturated.
Yeah.
Brendan, we're going to talk about your latest book, and particularly what you're writing in your latest book. But before, I want to ask this. So this year, 2020, has been a little surprising and strange and different. And a lot of people have been saying that, oh, that's a good reminder to slow down, to go deeper. How is your field affected by that? Do you feel that people actually are slowing down and going deeper and are willing to spend more time? Or is it just as crazy as it was when we were all over the place?
Yeah, it's a great question. Interestingly enough, I would say that for our business and for our clients and even our partners, it really didn't slow down, it sped up. Because especially being online, there was a lot of people that were trying to migrate their business and shift it quickly. And there was a lot of, obviously there's a lot of anxiety and stress and fear about the changes, don't get me wrong. But typically with us, that pushes us even harder to find new answers, not just for ourselves, but for our clients and our businesses. So as soon as it hit, and just the past year that we've gone through, I would say it's more sped up and more work than really scaling back.
Mm-hmm. I'll ask the question from which I started my online career. I'm not much of a presence, but I have enough experience to know the pains. But I remember a few years ago when I decided to start speaking through my social media platform, my question was, form or content, because we all know there are very simple rules that, pretty young faces attract people and certain pictures. Yet I want to convey a certain message. So how do you balance between the hooks, and I'm now talking about the hooks in a very maybe not such a nice way, like in the old days they would sell cars by placing semi-naked beautiful women on the cars. How do you find the balance between the hook and the actual essence of what you have to say?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I first want to just start of like the world that we're living in today and what that means for a content creator or a business or somebody just looking to share their message. The reality of the situation is there's over 60 billion messages sent out on digital platforms each day between social media, text notifications, emails. So that there's a ton of noise. So that world that we live in today, we're no longer just competing against our direct competition. We're competing against every piece of content for attention. And what we look at of what we call a hook point is really just to win the first part of the conversation. Because if you can't get somebody to stop in those first 3 seconds, like they're never going to get to your story. They're never going to get to your message, your purpose, your meaning, how you can add value into their life. So this concept of a hook point, there's three core pillars to it. And that first core pillar is, how do we just get somebody to stop, get them to stop the scroll, or in the case of YouTube, earn the click? And once we've gotten them to stop, and moves to that second core pillar of what is the story you're going to tell? Because we're not talking about clickbait. We're not talking about tricking people into this. Is the hook point is designed to get somebody to stop, but then the second core pillar of telling that story, you have to maintain the attention, because all the algorithms and even people themselves have caught on to that concept of clickbait. So we're not talking about that. So that's the second core pillar, is that story, to hold the retention as long as possible. And then the third core pillar is, do people believe in what I have to say? Do people trust what I'm saying? And all three of these have to play together, because if you can't get somebody to stop, you never get to your story. If you get somebody to stop, but your story is no good, then it falls apart. But if you get somebody to stop, your story is good, but people don't believe it, then it falls flat. So to your original question is, when we're developing hook points for clients, or just expressing in our book, it's not about changing who somebody is. We're not trying to trick somebody, misrepresent somebody. We're just contextualizing it in such a way that can get people to dive in and learn more. And through our experience and the data that we've seen, that first 3 seconds, it doesn't have to be a pretty face. It doesn't have to be a bathing suit or something like that. Can that stuff work? Sure. But I can show you plenty of examples where it doesn't work. It's not just about the look. It can be so many things. It can be the text, it can be the tone, it can be the performance, all of these things that can contribute to getting people to stop and pay attention to what you have to say as a content creator or as a brand.
So what is the hook point exactly? Are we talking about every piece of communication, like a theory how to start to communicate, or is it a hook point for a particular brand, something that you normally start whenever you communicate what you are doing in this world, you start with that? Or is it more of a skill to just start any conversation in a way that you will hold people's attention?
Yeah, I see hook points in every aspect of communication, every aspect of business. Because again, and I want to kind of make a distinction here, is yes, we live in a micro attention world, but that micro attention is really gaining the attention, getting people to stop. Once you have somebody's attention, you can hook them in for a long period of time. As like, even with Mindvalley, you guys have courses and master classes, or you look at like Netflix, for example, people will binge watch something for 10 hours over the weekend. Or you have other podcasts like this is a podcast medium where we're talking for a longer period of time. So it's not that the world we live in is you can't keep people's attention. The problem most people face is just getting people to stop, getting people to listen to what they say. And that's really where the hook points come in any facet. Whether we're talking about getting people into a course or into masterclass, or getting people into a specific podcast episode, or even speaking, is like getting people to attend a keynote speech, whether it's virtually or in person, or buying a book, whatever it may be, or just a social piece of video. It starts with a hook point to bring people in to listen to what we have to say.
So if we go very practical, for example, if you have to go online, like I was doing a live session today, I normally think to myself, what is the first thing I should say? How do I start? What kind of question do you ask yourself before you have to make that speech and catch people's attention, or make that piece of text, or whatever it is?
Absolutely. So let's start with one of the biggest mistakes people make with this, and then I'll lead into how we would actually solve that. So one of the biggest mistakes, and I see this all the time, is people, and especially brilliant people, or people that have so much value to offer to the world. Oftentimes it becomes so intuitive to them because they've been doing it, that they speak to their audience as if they already know what's happening. So there's a big distinction between what people need and what people want. And again, the people that are really brilliant, they start with what people need, and the consumer or the audience just may not be there yet. Mm-hmm. So what we want to do is we want to start with people want, want to bring people to what they need. So going back to my first, where we first started with my first book, 1 Million Followers, How I Built a Massive Social Audience in 30 Days, I was starting with what people want, which is they want followers, they want social media growth. But I knew what they needed was to understand how to test content, understand how to form strategic partnerships and alliances, understand how to create shareable content, understand the psychology behind social media. But if I led with any of those things, like the art of A/B testing for social media, or how to create strategic partnerships on social media, it wouldn't have the same impact
Mhm.
as the 1 million followers concept. So one of the things that I do, and it's broken down in the book by one of my friends that sold over $1 billion worth of product just through social media ads, is really ask yourself, is what keeps your core audience up at night? What is it they truly want? What is their greatest pain point, their biggest fear, anxiety, stress, whatever that may be? And think about how you can conceptualize what you want to talk about by starting with the want to
Mhm.
take them to what they need. So again, that example of 1 million followers, to start with where they want, to take them to the conversation of where they need. But one of the things that we found is the minute that you can articulate somebody's problem or pain point better than
Mhm.
they can articulate it to themselves, you've gotten them to buy in. They're going to want to listen to what you have to say.
Mhm.
They're going to believe and trust in your message and brand.
Mhm. Can we wind back a little bit and then tell me this? Those people who would like to read your new book, Hook Point, what is it that they want? What should we have? What should I have started with? Maybe this very interview.
Well, I think that the subtitle is like how to stand out in a 3 second world. And I've
Yeah.
seen some of the comments is, and you alluded to this, is the more people get on social media or the more people that are producing content, the more noisy the world gets. So I fundamentally believe, and this is, the reason I dedicated the first book and the second book to this, is there's people all over the world that have a powerful message, a powerful brand, product, or service that could really transform the world in a positive way. Yet they just don't know how to get people to listen to it. They don't know how to get people to stop. Their message is getting suppressed either by algorithms or governments or just lack of knowledge or strategy to do that. So the concept of a hook point is to solve for that, is to allow the people that have the ability to truly transform the world by connecting with the masses, giving them the tools in order to do so.
So I need to ask a little bit philosophical question, maybe in a way. So we as a humanity, we learn to communicate, and the more we get the platform, the wider the platform. Like with internet, we got a wider platform, and then now the social media, and before that it was, I don't know, radio, TV. We have to learn the ways of communicating and standing out, and but then time comes when everybody learns the same tricks essentially, and they all start doing the same things. Doesn't it work in a way as if we're just increasing the volume and keep increasing and increasing? It's like, I would bring an analogy. It's like you go to a party and first everybody speaks quietly, and then as we start needing more attention, we start being a little more desperate, and in the end everybody's just yelling. So isn't that a similar thing, that we keep learning the new tricks, and maybe the problem is deeper, and it's not in the fact that maybe the problem is the noise and we are adding to it? It's a philosophical question, of course.
No, and it's a very relevant and great question, and I'll tackle it in two different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Is one, I look at the world from the standpoint of, this is the reality that we're in. The reality is there's 60 billion messages sent out on digital platforms each day. The reality is that makes it very hard to stand out and have your voice be heard. At the same time, it presents a truly unique opportunity. 15, 20 years or longer, like the average person, you and I, couldn't just open up a laptop, push something out, and reach 1 million people,
Yeah.
in 48 hours. So I look at it from the standpoint, listen, the world has shifted, for better or for worse. Let's look at how we can, capitalize off that for the people that have the ability to have a positive impact on society, on culture of humankind, because it's not going to stop tomorrow. I don't have the solution to stop that. I don't know if it's going to happen, and if it does happen, it's going to be years, if not decades from now. So, to your point, is, do people use the same tricks over and over again, and then it becomes even more noisy? Yes, that happens, and that's really why we wanted to create, Hook Point, the book, and just the framework, is because that framework will keep you ahead of the curve at all times. Because even the most successful companies in the world, the successful brands, are constantly reinventing the way that they communicate. the way that they acquire customers, the way that they engage people. Just for example, and this is at the extreme, but Netflix invests $17 billion a year in original content. Why? Because each one of those shows they produce is a hook into their brand. And they know out of that $17 billion investment, only 5% of those shows need to work. Like it's just getting the next Stranger Things or getting the next Will Smith movie or one of those that will keep them and keep that competitive edge to really continue to win and continue to share their entertainment with the world. So again, yes, people can pick up on tricks and things of that nature, but Hook Point is more of a framework so that it allows you to constantly be innovative, constantly be able to be ahead of that curve and always capture attention to get people to pay attention to what you have to say.
So could you introduce that framework? What exactly makes it so different? Because there are tricks, and I understand. I'll give a slightly wider question. So generally, there are tricks which everybody can learn, and then there is the essence of the things. Why does this trick work? It's because of the nature of the trick. So can you explain the framework of the hook point, if it's a fair question? What is the most important thing? How to understand how it works so that you can actually replicate it and use it for your own communication?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, and I'll dive into the framework in a second, but it's a tool to retrain the way that you think about yourself, the way you think about your content, the way you think about your brand. A lot of times when we're working privately with clients to develop hook points, a majority of the time is spent reshaping the way that they just think and thinking differently than everybody else. Because the reality is there's no unique story left. There's nothing completely different in the world. We're all contextualizing our versions of the message, of the information and teachings that we want to express. So that's where it's really important to start thinking differently about yourself, thinking differently about how you want to express your message to the world. So we have a 5-step framework, and it really starts by studying the market. Start looking at, well, what books do I buy? What masterclass do I sign up for? What ads get me to stop? What organic content gets me to stop? And start making notes of that. Create a swipe file, create a Google Doc with it. And then once you start having those, then start plugging in your words, your products or services to see how it plays into it. I'm not saying that you necessarily use those, but what we find is to get started, the best baseline is to use the things that get you to stop, gets you to pay attention. Then on top of that, the second step is don't just look at the things that do work, look at the things that don't work as well. What are the things that don't get you to stop? What books fail, or what masterclasses, or what ads, what social content, and deconstruct that as well. So that's the second step of the framework. And then the third is we move to this exercise, this visualization exercise that I love to do with clients is imagine the editor of a magazine calls you up, and any magazine you want, whatever you want to be on. And they say, listen, you're going to be on the cover of this magazine. You're the only person on it. What do you want that headline to read to represent you, your message? And then as you're starting to jot down those notes, imagine your core audience walking down a busy street with cars honking, people knocking into you, and then they pass a magazine stand. And there's 30 other magazines on that stand. If you guys have ever been to a magazine stand, I'm sure you've seen it. It's just like, it's almost overwhelming. So think about what is that headline that's going to get somebody to stop, buy it, and then read it, because that's how difficult it is in the world that we live in today. And then from there, I don't want you just to come up with one. I want you to come up with 10, 15, 20, as many as you can think of. Because, and typically we say is once you hit that creative wall, push through it and keep coming up with ideas, because some of the best ideas come from that. And then that 4th step of the framework is testing and innovating. Testing, you can test it offline with your business partners or friends, or you can even take it to the extreme of what we do. And you guys do it at Mindvalley. We do it for our business and A/B test them against each other and see which one works. So that's just a little, and I know you have a question, but that's just a little bit of the framework that we use.
I look like I have a question, don't I? I know there are other questions, and I'll get to read them out as well. But I think it's a question to step number 3 or number 4. I'm not quite sure. It's somewhere in between there. So there is one thing which is what I think is smart about me. So I'm a person of big rants. When you ask me a question, I'll give you an answer for half an hour, and then I won't be satisfied that I haven't said everything. So when we work with my content, I always get this problem. They ask, so give me some of your quotes. And what I've noticed is that the things that I think are smart are not always the ones that resonate. For example, I would be on stage and I would make a speech, and then I come off stage and I see that people are sharing something I said, which I didn't think even was a big deal. So how do you figure out of all the brilliant things, of all the genius things that you have to say, which one is the one, actually?
Yeah, and there's two answers to that. Number one is, again, this concept of what is really going to get somebody to stop, what is really going to get somebody to share, what is that key takeaway. And again, the more you use this framework over and over again, you'll start to dial it in. But number two is testing, and what you're learning is people are giving you feedback. You being on stage is almost a test, seeing what resonates, what doesn't resonate, and actually sit down and be like, well, what is it about this quote or this line or this slide that resonated with people versus the thing that I thought it would be? And then you can really sit down and dissect, okay, what are the different variables that makes this stand out and this not? Because what most people do is they'll just see something resonates versus something else, but they don't actually stop to think about it and see if it happens the next time. Because if there is something that you really want to focus on and they're not focusing on it, they're focusing on something else, it could be just a subtle shift in the way that you represent it, the way that you communicate it, or the cadence or the tone or the pacing of it to get that to really stand out.
So another question is, I have this pathological honesty slash authenticity kind of syndrome. I don't know if it exists. I've come up with that. So when I'm thinking about catchy phrases or catchy ideas or my best quote, then I understand that I could use that on new audience over and over again, because after a while, you know that this is what catches attention. And in a way, the analogy that comes to my head are those pickup artists who come into a bar and use the same phrase on all the women in the world, and they'll get their result and their numbers. Question number one is that, can you be at peace with using with figuring out what works? Doesn't it feel a little bit like manipulating after a while? And that's, again, a philosophical question. And another question, it's a separate question, is when we're talking about hook points, are we talking about a hook point which you just use every time you go to a completely cold audience, to a new people? Or is there also the need to create a new hook point with your audience who has been with you, because they get jaded with your messages after a while, maybe? And how do you catch attention of those people who already know you for a while?
Yeah, so I'll start with the second question first. Yes, we develop hook points for cold and warm audiences. It's not just a cold audience thing. And you bring up a really great point, is, the cold audience is to bring that people in that know nothing about you, know nothing about your product or service. So they work amazing for that. They also work amazing for warm audiences. And obviously with a warm audience, they know a little bit more about you. So you have some flexibility with playing with their knowledge or their experience with you to develop those hooks. But it's really critically important that you play on both ends of the spectrum. So when we're working with clients, we're developing multiple hook points for them, not just one, because we want that constant evolution and innovation with their brand, with their product or service. Going back to the example I said, is Netflix is investing $17 billion a year in content. Netflix is a huge brand, over 100 million subscribers, yet they keep investing. Nike invests over $6 billion a year in endorsement deals. They've been around for 30, 40 years, but they're constantly using hooks to bring people in. Same thing when I was doing work with Mindvalley or with our brands, is we're constantly looking at those hooks, both from an organic content perspective, in addition to the paid aspect of it and constantly evolving that. And you see that with social media. It's like you can't just keep posting the same thing over and over again. You have to communicate different, contextualize different. In terms of your question about manipulation, to me, I think it's manipulation if you're misleading people,
Yeah.
or if you're just not offering value to the world. But to me, like, a hook is just to get somebody to stop, to win the first part of the conversation, so you earn the right to the next part of the conversation. So in this micro attention world that we live in, I see the conversation happening in stages. Is you have the first 3 seconds, which is to get somebody to stop. Then you have your story starting to win the next 10 to 15 seconds. And then you have your story arc, which just keeps building and building and building. I only see it as manipulation if you're doing just that, trying to manipulate people. With a hook point, it's really just to get somebody to pay attention to what you have to say so that they can make the determination, is this the right fit for my life, for my business, for my brand? So that's the way that I look at it.
Cool. I'm going to give a chance to people who are taking part, and I almost never do that, so it's a little bit new to me, to read out some of your questions. Yeah, okay, that's an interesting question without ads. That came from Nicola Bilopitov, and the question is, do you really need to advertise to grow your social following, or can you grow it without the ads? And I'll add to that question, because I tried with ads on my personal brand for a while in Instagram, and I got really frustrated because my engagement, my natural engagement started going so down that I just gave up everything, and I decided I'll just be me and see how it goes. So what's your answer to that? The ads versus no ads, and can you really grow?
The answer is, can you grow without ads? Absolutely. Collectively with our team, we've grown over 30, 40 million followers organically and generated over 40 billion views. So it's definitely doable. Everything comes down to content. Whether you're using an ad or not, is how effective is your content in capturing attention. So I'll break it down very simply. It comes down to two things, and it plays into the core pillars, but I'm going to simplify it even further. In terms of social media, whether you're trying to generate followers, generate reach, engagement, whatever your goal is, it's two things. It's really simple, but I'm not going to say it's easy to pull off. Number one, can you get somebody to stop the scroll? Can you generate that pattern interruption? Because the minute somebody scrolls past, or your audience scrolls past, what you're doing is you're teaching the algorithm that this content is not going to retain the audience. And this word algorithm is thrown around a lot, and it's people get angry at it, or that confuses them. It's frustrating. The algorithm has one job and one job only. It's to keep you on the platform longer. That is how these platforms make money. So they have a very specific job to seek out the content that retains attention for the longest time period possible. Once it finds that content, it rises it to the top. Because if we each, listening to this right now, open up Instagram, there's probably over 1,000 pieces of content that it could see to us based upon all of the accounts that we follow and the content that we've engaged with. So obviously Instagram and the algorithms can't push 1,000 pieces to you as soon as you open up the app, because it would be extremely overwhelming and you'd close it and never come back. So it has to prioritize, well, what are the top 15 posts that the algorithm believes is going to retain your attention for as long as possible? So that means 985 out of those 1,000 posts are getting deprioritized. So that's where people have struggles gaining followers or reach or engagement organically or through paid, is because, one, they don't get people to stop the scroll. And that's the first signal to the algorithm that this content or this content creator is not going to maintain attention. So we're going to limit the reach of it, which is the second thing. Is once you get somebody to stop the scroll, how long do you hold that attention for? If you can master those two things with your content, you will have success, organic or paid. That's where you see content creators like a Jay Shetty or Prince EA, or even some of the work that we've done together with Mindvalley, the videos that generate 10, 15, 20 plus million views organically. It's because we're playing to those two contributing factors.
So do I understand it right that this rule applies both to whether you are trying to grow organically or ads? So just because you're paying for ads doesn't give you a guarantee that your following is going to grow massively, because if your ads don't arrest attention, then you will be just tossing out money.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter whether you're doing paid or organic, whether you're doing paid to generate followers, generating paid to sell a product or to generate a lead. It all comes into play, because what does paid advertising do? It gives you the ability to reach people with your message or your content. Then it's up to your content to deliver to maximize the reach that you've given. So like one of the biggest metrics that we pay attention to with paid, and every company does this, including Mindvalley, is the return on ad spend. You know, is you seed your content to somebody. So what is the return on ad spend or return on investment of it? And some creative will yield a 1 return on ad spend versus something that's super optimized that's working may result in 10 return on ad spend or 10 ROI. Again, that's not the ad that's doing that. It's the creative that's doing that. It's not that you just automatically pay for something that it automatically works. And you think of, and this is the course of history, is you think about newspaper advertising back in the day, and it's still around today. Just because you place an ad in the newspaper doesn't mean you're going to get a client. Doesn't mean it's going to be successful. It's the way that you contextualize it. It's the way that you shape it that makes it successful or unsuccessful.
Mm-hmm. So I'll ask another question from my own struggles, but I've seen a lot of people in on social media doing all sorts of interesting things to grow their following very dramatically. Like they would do giveaways or whatnot, come up with all sorts of things. And oftentimes I hear feedback that after initial spike, it all dies out, and then the account is actually more dead than alive. And you were just saying that if your content is being scrolled through, you get punished by algorithm. And algorithm is probably the scariest word out there about social media. So what do we regular normal people do, those who don't have the opportunity to hire someone who really understands that? Because I've hired people, loads of people, and some people understand what they're doing, other people don't understand what you're doing. It's, even if you have money, it's actually a gamble to a great degree. Do we actually dig into all of that science, understand algorithms, try to fool them, or do we just deal with what we do best, keep talking?
So my philosophy is, again, focusing on those two things. Can you get somebody to stop, and how long can you hold that attention to? Mm-hmm. No matter if it's social media or offline or whatever, to me, that skill set should be mastered if you want to be successful in business. So that is fundamentally, no matter what, you should learn that skill set, because it's going to help you apply and be successful in all aspects of life, all aspects of business. And typically, to your question of giveaways or other ways of growing accounts, typically where it dies is because your content's not up to standard. So what I always do when I'm starting to work with clients that want to generate followers, I say, let's focus on the content first, and then we can dive into the content strategies. Because again, the algorithms, if they find content that's grabbing attention and holding attention, they're going to want to seed it to as many people as possible. So again, going back to like a Jay Shetty or a Goldcast, that's how they're reaching more people than they have followers. So even for them, a majority of their viewership is coming from non-followers, people that don't know who they are, and yet they're still able to capture attention. So when I see an account that has used giveaways or meme accounts or shout outs or ads, and they're just failing to generate that reach or engagement, it's typically because the content is just not designed properly. So if that's not working, that's where I would just start from ground zero with this concept of, how do I just get somebody to stop? And then once I have somebody's attention, how do I maintain it for the longest period of time? And that will get you back on track.
Cool. I'll want to ask you for I don't know, maybe experiment. Would you be up to give a more practical example? I don't know. I could be the
Yeah.
guinea pig, or we could maybe ask someone. I'm actually not sure if I know how to bring a person online. But before that, I want to ask another question, and it's a little politically incorrect. So if you take social media, let's say, and all this noise that we see in the world, and compare it to even music, then in music, the pieces of music which are the most popular generally are, musically speaking or artistically speaking, rather simple tunes. And I've noticed a lot of the times in social media, it's similar. You get really deep content and it just doesn't grab attention. And it's a nerdy question, by the way. Yet you would notice that something very simplistic, very maybe even primitive to some degree, is catching people's attention because it's this pop culture in a way. I'm trying to bring analogies with music. Pop music is so much easier to popularize to a bigger audience, compared to, let's say, classical music, right? Which might be like, purely culturally speaking, a much more deeper form of content. So how do you balance that if you are a nerd like me? How do you simplify or make it a little more easy to consume what you have to offer to the world? Because I like depth, and oftentimes the things which are memes and which are super popular, I'm like, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, and it's a great question, and it goes back to this distinction between need and want. Is
Mm.
you fundamentally know what people need because you've done the work, you've gone deep, you're a deep person. And that's not to say that we cannot communicate that. We definitely can, and we definitely want to, because we know that's where the real transformation happens. But what we have to do is we have to start with what their want is to lead them in. So going back to Jay Shetty, what he does is, like, if you've ever gone through a breakup, watch this. Or
Mhm.
if you've ever experienced heartbreak, or if you're about to get angry at a friend, watch this. And it starts very simple, and then he brings you into what you need. There's another great YouTube channel called Yes Theory, and their mission is seek discomfort. Now, discomfort is something that we all need to go into, but we're very resistant.
Mhm.
So they do very high concept videos to bring people into the deeper conversation of, like, a first date on Tinder flying around the world. Things like that, that again hooks people in, grabs their attention because it's what they want, to then take them where they need. So you've seen a lot of content creators will upload inspirational meme content, and it's beautiful and it's fun to watch. And we ran an experiment where we took it a little bit of a different approach. Is we took that meme inspirational video, which is very surface level, it's very simplistic, it's not super deep. We would play that, and then we would come on the screen at the end and break down what it meant to us, how you can apply it to your life. So
Mhm.
that's how I think about it. Is you can absolutely, and we all need to go to those deeper levels of understanding to have that impact. But we need to understand that when people are scrolling in their feeds, you can't in the first 3 seconds go super deep. You
Yeah.
just got to get something to get them to stop, because if you make somebody think too much, or if you make somebody think too little, you're going to lose them. There's like this sweet spot in the middle that brings them into this conversation that we're about to have with them, to have real transformation.
Mhm. So I want to ask if you are up to doing a little experiment to make it more practically applicable. Unfortunately, I might be a nerd, but I'm still very helpless with technology. So I'll be your guinea pig. Let's say if I have to do a post to, I don't know, to call people to, for example, um, try my program. I don't know, pay, no pay, whatever. Uh, could you coach me into saying the right thing?
Sure. So let's just say that we're launching a meditation program. This
Mhm.
is an example that I've shared several times, and I think it'll help. Is the issue with meditation is it's been around for thousands of years. You type meditation into Google, there's going to be billions of results coming up, and people typically say the same thing. Well, meditation is the key to stillness or contentment or relieving anxiety or stress. And the minute that I see that as a consumer, as I'm scrolling through the feed, I already know what it's going to say. Even you may have a completely different take, subconsciously and maybe even consciously, I'm like, well, I already know that, so I don't have to watch this video, or I don't need to sign up for this course, or things like that. So how do we break that? How do we get somebody to stop with a subject that's been talked about for thousands of years? There's billions of results on Google. So one of the tools that we use, and I'm not saying we use it all the time, but it is an effective tool in this case, is subverting expectations, flipping it completely on its head. So what that may look like if I were to design an ad promoting a meditation course, maybe the meme card or the headline at the top reads, "Meditation is a scam," in all caps and exclamation points. And again, I'm not talking about clickbait here, so I need to go into the story. So the story may be, have you ever felt like just meditation hasn't worked for you? Almost like it's a scam. Well, if that's you, I really feel your pain, because when I first started meditating, I was racking my brain because I was told I needed to sit down and clear my head. And every time I sat down, my mind would race. And I thought, like, is there something wrong with me? Is my mind broken, or is this meditation thing just doesn't work? So what I want to do today is give you access to this free course where I break down the 3 things that I learned from a Buddhist monk on how I was able to learn meditation, somebody that it didn't work for me, that didn't even really believe in it, to meditating every single day for the past 10 years. So will you click the link below and join me on this journey? I'm really excited to share this information with you. So again, what I did is I used the pattern interruption to get people to stop, but then I matched a fear or an objection. Most people avoid objections in their ads or their content because they're scared of what that may say about them. But sometimes we'll use that subverting expectations to speak to the objection that everybody else is afraid to speak to grab their attention. And then we tell the story, connect and relate. And hopefully through that story and that connection and relation, we earn enough trust and credibility where they'll take the next step to join our course or a retreat or whatever that may be.
So if you guys have seen an ad from Mindvalley with this kind of text, you know where it comes from. I actually don't know if it exists. So, you know, it's interesting that in the old days of me being a marketer, there were days like that when I was a marketer, before I became an author. I remember that my favorite thing to do was, before writing and the next email, was to ask my customer support team to send me all the angry emails and all the quarrels and arguments and objections that the audience came, because then that would give me such a good hook for the next email. So I guess I was subconsciously doing what you are doing now.
Yeah, it works. Like there's a perfect movie. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's this movie called 8 Mile with Eminem based upon his story. And if you've seen the movie, there's a scene at the end where he goes into into the final rap battle. And what he does is he starts the rap battle by making fun of himself, saying all the things the competitor was going to say, that he's white, that he's short, that he can't rap. So by the time that his competition comes up, he's lost everything. He doesn't know what to say because all the things that he was going to say, Eminem said about himself. It's the same thing as if you can tackle that objection head on, oftentimes that will earn a tremendous amount of trust and credibility that for people that haven't even thought about opting in or have ignored it in the past.
Can I ask you for a little improvisation? There is another, I didn't actually wait for your answer because I was hoping to just ask you. So there is another cliche which a lot of us have been using since this past year, 2020. The idea that it was such a horrible year, and you know, when are you going to end? Is there a way to turn this around? Because a lot of people jumped on this, like, oh my God, this world is so different. Is it ever going to be the same? So we all kept saying the same things. It's a horrible year. It's never going to be the same. You know, now we're all on hold. Nothing is happening. Is there a way to turn that cliche around, just to understand how your thinking would be working?
Yeah, can you say the cliche one more time?
The cliche is that the 2020 has been such a horrible year. When is it going to end? Or that, you know, this, I don't know, it was It's what we all were relating to, or starting a lot of the times this year. We would start the content by tying it to the fact that we are all stuck at home, and this is so
Yeah, like
unusual.
again, it's the place that I go is how do you flip it completely on its head? And and these are very rough ideas, but why COVID is the greatest thing to happen to humankind, or why COVID is going to generate more generational wealth than any time in human history, or why COVID is the greatest opportunity to start a business than ever before. So again, it's like I go to, like you said, people, everybody's saying this one thing. It's so hard, it's so difficult. So how do we completely flip it into a different thing to get people to pay attention versus what everybody else is saying? So, and it's a great example is whenever you see something or you're going into a market that it's been talked about millions or billions of times, is just even starting with flipping it on its head. So for example, we did a organic video that performed extremely well for us where it said, warning, safety is dangerous. So we
I
flipped it
love
on its
it.
head. It was like everybody's talking about being safe, but we talked about how safety is dangerous from the mindset perspective of growth. So where
Mhm.
everybody's saying COVID or the pandemic or whatever word you want to use is super difficult, flip it on its head and look at it from the opportunity it presents. And in that story, you can say, listen, I understand people have died and I'm really sad and feel for those people. And it's not that we shouldn't ignore that, but at the same time, look at the growth opportunity that this is providing for humankind and society.
Mhm. But can I go a little deeper with that? So let's say
Absolutely.
you, because I have seen also people saying that. In fact, an article when we moved to Estonia, an article here in Estonia came where Vishnu was saying similar thing, that this was the best thing that happened to him. He actually was alluding to the fact that he moved and his business was reorganized. So what happens when everybody flips suddenly, and now we're all talking the other way around? So there were a lot of people who were also saying that, oh my God, that's the best thing that happened to us. We have slowed down. We have, it's a great opportunity for growth and transformation. How many times can you do those flips, and where do you flip next time when the whole crowd flips suddenly with you?
Yeah, again, that's why we set this up as a mindset, as a methodology, as a framework, because you should be always reinventing your messages, reinventing yourself. And the minute that you can learn this skill set, that you'll be ahead of the curve. You'll always be thinking 2, 3 steps ahead of everybody else. Now, there's core fundamental pillars of your business, like Mindvalley's mission and underlying value it provides the world is not going to change. But the hooks into it are going to change, like the new mission that you guys have of no longer having college or university. That is a new hook to bring people in. Or as you guys have started to brilliantly do, is bringing in like a Keith Ferrazzi or Mickey or these amazing business minds to also provide value. So you can even see it within the construct of what you guys do, and every brand can take from that is you don't want to just have one hook and be done with it and move on. It's constantly developing new hooks. But even like, for example, with the 1 Million Followers book, which came out 2 years ago, the core baseline hook doesn't change, but the ways we bring people into the message through our ads, through our organic content will evolve into it.
Mhm. So I have a few more minutes, so I'll check if there are any questions that I want to ask. My God, my light is so bright I can't even see the text anymore. Um, That's a funny question. Could you help me how to influence people on Instagram and make my profile stand out? I think it's a little bit complicated if we don't see the profile, but it's just a funny question. Would you be able to answer that quickly?
Yeah, I would have to dive into the profile. I would recommend checking out the book and the link that I put in there. You get a free masterclass with that. But just again, at a high level, without seeing the profile, just
Mhm.
look at it from these two standpoints. Is one, is your content getting people to stop? And two, how are you holding attention for the longest time period possible? And again, as part of the framework that we talked about, go look at other accounts that are successful. Look at what they're doing. What are their formats, their structures? How are they opening their first 3 seconds? Really dissect it and then try and duplicate that for your profile and the content that you produce.
So a question I want to ask, because I totally subscribe to that question. Is humor important?
Yes, it is important. So we use a communication framework to help contextualize messages to reach the masses. And what we say, essentially, communication is math, because there's different ways that people perceive the world. And we need to make sure that we're communicating based upon all the different ways people perceive the world. So, for example, there's people that perceive the world through thoughts and logic. So facts and data, it has to make sense for them. There's people that perceive the world through feelings and emotions. It's all about how it makes them feel. They don't really care about the data, the facts. There's people that experience the world through fun and humor. It's got to be fun. It's got to be exciting. There's other people that perceive the world through values and opinions. It's like, do I trust this? Do I believe in this? Then there's people that are just go pure action. They just go. They don't think. They just find their way navigating the world by just testing all these different things. So each one has a percentage. So like feelings and emotions is 30% of the population. Facts and data and logic are 20%. Humor's 25%. So what we look at is the core three is fun, facts, and feelings. If you do that generally reaches 75% of the North American population and the global population. So humor is a big point in terms of constructing it. Now, does that mean you have to go over the top and be silly? No. You can have a fun, playful tone. Like if you want to see a perfect example is go back and look at the original Dollar Shave Club launch video. They do an amazing job of intertwining all of those. So like, just to give you an example, is like, if I was to, let's just say I was to sell a car with fun, facts, and feelings, or let's just say a house, we're going to sell a house. I would say, you should check out this house because it has 5 bedrooms. It's 2,500 square feet and it has the best tax value for your investment. And when you move in, you're going to feel so good because it has just this comfortable vibe to it. And it's going to feel so good sitting around the fireplace with your family celebrating holidays. And when you see this pool and backyard, it is awesome. You're going to have so much fun. You're going to be the coolest neighbor because you're going to throw the craziest and funnest parties. So let's schedule an appointment for you to come and view this house. So what did I do? I did the facts of what the house is, the feelings of how it's going to feel, and how much fun it's going to be. And
but why in this order particularly?
What was that?
Why in this particular order?
It doesn't have to be in that order. It can be in any order. You just want to make sure that you hit all three in your message. You could start with fun. You could start with feelings. It doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure you hit all three.
I'm actually surprised that fun and humor are so high up. I thought I would have imagined that they're like minority compared to the facts and the feelings. The question here came about trust. How do you create trust in your communication?
Well, again, trust can come from, are you speaking the language that other people are speaking? And I'm not talking about the actual language, but if, like, for example, if you perceive the world through feelings and emotions, and all I talk about is data, facts, doesn't make sense, you're going to lose the people that perceive the world through feelings. You're going to lose the people that perceive the world through fun. So that's one element of it, is make sure that you're contextualizing your message so it resonates with the different ways that people perceive content, perceive language. Secondarily, do you believe it? You know, sometimes we're pushed in by marketing agencies or partners to position ourselves, position our content in a way that doesn't feel comfortable to us. If you don't feel comfortable, that's going to come off on screen or come off on stage. So making sure that the story that you tell, the hook that you put out into the world, A, you deliver on, and B, you believe in. And at the same time, and Kristina, you hit it perfectly, and I've experienced this too, is once you hit scale, listen, you're not going to please everybody all the time. So you just got to understand that going in this world that we live in, there's certain people that aren't going to trust you. There's certain people that aren't going to buy or engage, and that's fine. just look at it from an economy of scale. Is where is that negativity rank? Is it 5%, 10%? If it's 50% or more, then maybe I would look at, reshaping the way that you're positioning yourself or your message or your brand.
So we don't have a lot of time, but I have to ask you before the final question. I have to ask you this because it puzzles me. So talking about humor, half a year ago, I decided to look at TikTok because my kids were playing with that, and I realized that this is the platform that communicates through primarily humor. Is every message possible through humor? Because I was looking at it and puzzling, and I still couldn't figure out how I can convey my message through a platform which is so unusual. And also the question is more, are there any specifics, like what kind of people gravitate to what kind of platforms, like YouTubers versus Facebookers versus Instagrammers versus, I don't know, TikTokers?
Yeah, so the audience on each of these platforms is at such scale that you'll get people that perceive the world through feelings and emotions and fun and humor and even facts. And that's where you're seeing the diversification of content even on TikTok. Now, obviously, TikTok is skewing younger, but each platform is pretty well diverse in the audience out there. Now, when we talk about fun and humor, obviously there's a time and a place and there's a use. I'm not talking about being silly. Like, especially, like, I'll give you an example. If you've ever watched a horror movie, is there always is comedic scenes or comedic characters because they have to break up the intensity, because you can't be super intense. And that's same with a meaningful subject matter. Is you can make fun of yourself. You can tell a funny joke about an experience or a story. It's not about going over the top with it and being silly and diluting the message, but using it in such a way that can break it up and bring those people in that do perceive the world through fun and through humor, so that you can keep them engaged.
Mm-hmm. But do we pick platforms, because there are so many, and I just can't focus on all of that. Do we also pick platforms from through, what is my primary way of communicating? Because LinkedIn for me, for example, is a little too dry and too inexplicable, and TikTok is the opposite. It's a little too much and also inexplicable. How much do I have to rely on my own personality, or do I have to go for everything if I want to grow?
I definitely don't say go for everything. I'm a huge believer in choosing one, getting super deep in it, super good at it, and then determine if you want to diversify out to other platforms. But you see people, for example, YouTubers that are amazing YouTubers, like some of the biggest, but they go to Instagram or TikTok or fall flat. And they don't even, and there's some that just don't even, there's some people that are huge on YouTube and don't tackle other platforms and are wildly successful. But yes, communication, your communication style, your communication comfort level, the type of engagement that you want to have with people is super important. Now, the most important thing in choosing is which platform do you use the most? Because I want you to become a student of it, not just saying consume the content, but understand how it works, understand why this piece of content generated all of this reach and engagement and this piece didn't.
It's interesting because somewhere the perfectionist in me says, like, if you understand communication, you should figure it out. If you figured it out in YouTube, you should figure it out. In fact, you made your experiment on Facebook, but then you replicated it on Instagram. So you did like understand the essence of it. So it's the perfectionist in me complaining. I want to ask the final question. So we've talked for a long time. Is there a message, like just one message, if we forgot everything, that you would want us regular people out there in social media to remember in our communication with the outside world?
Yeah, that your number one job in transforming the world, having a positive impact, is just getting people to pay attention, is getting people to stop. If you can do that, you are well on your way to being successful in this world and having a positive impact. And along with that, the mindset is so critically important. And that's where you guys have amazing courses on mindset. Is this takes time to get good at. We've been doing this for 15 years. That's why we built a whole consulting firm, just developing hook points for people that are ready for it. So number one is just, if anything, spend a majority of your time mastering the art of gaining attention, and do not give up. Don't quit until you've mastered that. And once you do that, you're going to be in such a good place no matter what algorithm change, no matter what social network changes, no matter what happens in the world. You will always have the ability to get your message out in a powerful way.
Cool. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask, before I say my final words, I'm going to ask the people who are with us right now and those who are going to listen to it in recording, you can still do that, to leave a heart to my guests. Brendan, I've interviewed you before. I wonder if I had the tradition then, but please leave your heart for my guest, Brendan. Yes, the hearts are coming in. And if you're watching it in recording, leave it also. Thank you so much for finding time and for talking to me mostly, but also to our audience. I have to admit that this topic was a little tough for me because I don't generally interview about such
You did a
pragmatic.
wonderful job.
Thank
Great
you.
questions.
But I think I want to revenge at some point and talk to you about things that I love to talk about, like um, everyday life philosophy. I don't know, about
I would love
everyday
that.
life things. Or maybe we'll do that offline. Let's see. But thank you so much. Thank you for being so patient with me and for your generosity, just sharing whatever you have to share without reserve. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a true pleasure.
And if you're still there, you're welcome to finish this beautiful meeting, and heart to you guys as well who attended. See you soon again. Bye.
Thank you.